Tonight and every night for the rest of your life, I want you to take the last 5 minutes before you go off to sleep and realize that you are about to program your subconscious mind. All right? Your subconscious mind is most at home when you are unconscious, when you are asleep. If you spend the last 5 minutes of your day, which so many people do, reviewing all of the things that you don't like and all the things that didn't work out and how terrible you feel and who abused you and who was mean to you and who said this and they did this, and you're constantly doing this kind of thing with your mind, then you are programming your subconscious mind that when you awaken, because you're now about to marinate for the next 8 hours in your subconscious mind. And then when you awaken, you will rejoin the universal subconscious mind, the mind of God, from which we all originate. We're all just individualized personal expressions of that one thing that we call the Tao, or God, or divine mind, or soul, or spirit. But the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So you want to be real careful about how you program your subconscious mind. This is from the book of Job. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. Job 33, 15 and 16. When you are slumbering on your bed, he opens your ears and seals your instruction. What you place into your subconscious mind as you are about to go into this deep slumber is all dependent upon what you do the last 3 or 4 or 5 minutes before you go off to sleep. You want to place into your imagination whatever you have placed into the I am that I spoke about earlier. I am well. I am content. I am peaceful. I am happy. I am prosperous. I am abundant. I am God. I am God. I am God. Because at the basic core, each and every one of us are just that. It's like if you just close your eyes and just listen to this meditation. It's from the book, 3 Magic Words. Here's what I'd like you to say to yourself at night. I know that I am pure spirit, that I always have been, and that I always will be. There is inside me a place of confidence and quietness and security where all things are known and understood. This is the universal mind, God, of which I am a part, and which responds to me as I ask of it. This universal mind knows the answer to all of my problems. And even now, the answers are speeding their way to me. I needn't struggle for them. I needn't worry or strive for them. When the time comes, the answers will be there. I give my problems to the great mind of God. I let go of them, confident that the correct answers will return to me when they are needed. Through the great law of attraction, everything in life that I need for my work and fulfillment will come to me. It is not necessary that I strain about this, only believe. For in the strength of my belief, my faith will make it so. I see the hand of divine intelligence all about me, in the flower, the tree, the brook, the meadow. I know that the intelligence that created all these things is in me and around me, and that I can call upon it for my slightest need. I know that my body is a manifestation of pure spirit, and that spirit is perfect. Therefore, my body is perfect also. I enjoy life, for each day brings a constant demonstration of the power and wonder of the universe and myself. I am confident, I am serene, I am sure. No matter what obstacle or undesirable circumstance crosses my path, I refuse to accept it, for it is nothing but illusion. There can be no obstacle or undesirable circumstance to the mind of God, which is in me, around me, and serves me now. This is the great lesson. Know this within you. When Herman Melville was writing Moby Dick, he wasn't writing about a man looking for a whale. He was writing about a man trying to find his higher self. He said these words, "For as this appalling ocean surrounds the verdant land, so in the soul of man lies one insular Tahiti, full of peace and joy, but encompassed by all of the horrors of the half-lived life." In every moment of your life as you leave here today, you have this choice. You can either be a host to God or a hostage to your ego. It's your call. Thank you. God bless you. Namaste.
The first is that force always creates a counterforce. Force creates a counterforce, whereas power is always creates grace. Grace and power, over and over again, he reports the research that power is something that will bring grace, that will bring God, will bring consciousness to the presence of it, whereas force always creates a counterforce. So that when you have a force, that is, if you react with shame, if you try to make your children feel ashamed, what are they going to do back? They resent, and what are they going to try to do to you? Some way of making you feel ashamed as well. It happens every time. You just have to watch it. You try to shame them and watch if they don't try to shame you. You said I couldn't do that, and you have to be punished for that. But you did that. You said this right away. Shame creates more shame. You've created a lowered energy field. They're weakened, you're weakened, and it works not just with shame, but with fear, with anxiety, with anger. Every time we use any of these, a counterforce is created. The second quality is that force is always loud, aggressive, whereas power is silent. That you raise energy levels through silence, and there's very little movement required when you are empowering, whereas when you get louder, screaming, aggressive, more outgoing, and so on. The third is that force is always moving against something. That's what force is. So whatever it is that you have, we have to move against it. We have to mobilize our forces and defeat it, whereas power does not move at all. The fourth thing is that force is always incomplete. Therefore, it must be fed energy. You must constantly feed energy of force. You must constantly be talking to it. You must constantly be upgrading it. You must constantly be trying to make it attract more energy. It's always demanding of energy. Whereas power is total and complete, requires nothing from outside itself. Power does not demand anything out there, not any weapons. It doesn't need any arguments to win. Power is that which you are connected to silently. The fifth, force always makes demands. Whenever you are in force, and if you look at any of those emotions and energy levels below 200, you will see that there's a demand to each one of them. Whereas power has no needs whatsoever. It is at peace. The sixth is force is constantly consuming. It has insatiable appetite. It is constantly demanding more. And in the process, it consumes, and in the process of consuming, it destroys. Power is always content, makes no demands, and needs nothing to consume. 7, force always takes energy away. It takes your energy and takes it with it. Whereas power energizes. It gives forth. It supplies and supports. And it gives life energy. When you go to God, when you go to Spirit, when you go above 200 to any of those levels, what you are doing is you are energizing those around you and sending it out. Whereas when you're in any of the ones below 200, you are taking energy away. The eighth is that force is always associated with judgment and generally makes us feel badly about ourselves. Any of those emotions, any of those thoughts have to do with judging, and ultimately when you experience those thoughts or you're in the presence of someone who is using those thoughts, you will end up feeling badly or worse for the experience. Whereas power is associated with compassion, radical humility, and always makes us feel positive about ourselves. When you encounter someone whose thoughts are above 200, after that encounter, you will feel better for having been in their presence, based upon not just what you talk about, but even the feelings that you have. Whereas when you're associated with or around people who are using the techniques below 200, you feel yourself feeling badly, worse, and depleted of energy. Number 9, force always polarizes because it demands conflict in order to survive. Force and conflict go together. Power, the energy of power above 200 will unify and make you feel more like you belong, a sense of belonging. Number 10, I just put it this way, in force, the cost is always very high because enemies are always being created. Force needs an enemy. It costs to stay in a state of force. Whereas power has no cost whatsoever. It's absolutely free. It's graceful, it's silent, it's easy, it's non-consuming, it makes no demands. The 11th, and I've always been intrigued by this, the 11th quality or characteristic of force, force always requires proof because it's literal and it's therefore arguable. Whereas power deals with intangibles and it knows that health is better than disease. It doesn't need any proof of that. It knows that honor is better than dishonor. It knows that faith is better than doubt, and that being constructive is better than destructive. And you don't need a chi-square, and you don't need an analysis of variance, and you don't need a statistical test to be able to prove it, and you don't need to argue about it. There's an awareness that is internal, that is instinctive, that says, I don't have to go out there and show anything. It's why it's quiet. I know it is better to be honorable than it is to be dishonorable. I know it is better to be honest than to steal. I don't need proof of that. I know that it is better to be healthy than to be in a state of disease. I know that life is better than death. I know this. I don't have to prove it. I don't have to explain it. I live in a consciousness of empowerment in which I don't have to go through and look outside of myself to validate whether these things that I know instinctively and intuitively are correct.
When we take this power of this invisible part of us, it's so hard to define this. We call it a belief, or you call it a thought, or you call it your soul, or your spirit, or whatever. But that invisible part of you that really determines everything about your life. And you begin to say to yourself, how can I apply the awareness of these thoughts and how I use my mind to make my life all that I want it to be, to bring into my life the things that are important to me, to improve the quality of my relationships, to have the success and so on that I think that I'm entitled to. And it's really getting to the point where you know that every thought that you have has a potential for coming into your life, for coming into form. You start to get real cautious about having anything in your mind that isn't going to work for you. And question why you would keep any of those thoughts in you. I can remember one story of a woman who came to me one time and told me how miserable she was, that she was married to a drunk. And I said, well, what's wrong? And she said, well, he slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and it's just awful to be around him. And I said, let's see if I understand. Let's see who's crazy in this little scenario you've just described. Now, you said you've married to a drunk, and the drunk slurs his words, and he repeats himself, and he smells bad, and he sounds foolish. I said, that's every drunk I've ever known does exactly that. We got a drunk who's acting and doing everything that you would expect a drunk to do. Now we got you. And you're married to someone that you call a drunk, and you're expecting him to be sober. You know, now who's crazy? The drunk who's doing what he's supposed to, or you who's expecting someone who is what you've defined him to be something different than what they are? He is what he is. And why would you want to entertain, why would you want to keep thoughts in your mind that are making you miserable, which is going to expand misery for you in your life by just having those thoughts? Why not change around those thoughts and tell yourself that you're, like, if you argue for your misery, then the only thing you're going to get is your misery. You have to get that, and you're arguing for it all the time. You're going around talking about how miserable you are. So you want to get real careful about that. And I suggest to every one of you that whatever it is you find yourself incapable of doing, or whatever you found that has been a great obstacle, or whatever it is that's in a relationship that isn't working, that you just can't seem to transcend, or whatever's going on with a particular employee or a way that you're approaching anything in your business, that if you examine, just for a moment, if you examine what belief is it that supports this behavior, because the ancestor to every action is a belief, is a thought, and then work at re-examining that. I mean, I've done that so many times in my own life, and things that don't seem like they're that important to other people. Like, my wife doesn't understand why certain things about my tennis game that I play every day that I've really challenged. I mean, I grew up with the belief that I couldn't hit a backhand. And it was for 10 years I told myself that I don't have a backhand. I can't hit a backhand. And then I began to change that belief around. And it wasn't that I just, practice. I began to visualize myself doing all the things that it takes to make a backhand work for myself. I began to do that with a serve. I began to do that with a drop shot. Instead of telling myself, I can't hit a drop shot, and then acting out on that, and a whole match will go by, and a whole year will go by, and I'll never hit a drop shot, or I'll never hit a lob, or I'll never try a spin serve, or whatever. If you keep telling yourself that you can't do something, you act on that belief, and whether it's just a silly little thing like improving your tennis game, which isn't so silly if you're making your living off of it, or if you're coaching it, or any other skill area, or anything in your life, change around the thought, as you think, so shall you be.
And it's something I'd like to suggest to you when I talk about you can't give away what you don't have. That whatever it is that you are giving away in the way of being offended or being an appreciator, and by the way, appreciation versus depreciation is the highest form of energy that you can have to your thoughts. In other words, every time you have a thought of depreciation, you have weakened yourself in some form. Any kind of a thought of depreciation. Whereas if you can shift a thought of depreciation into one of appreciation, even for that which you have been conditioned to believe deserves to be depreciated, if you can figure out a way to change and alter your thoughts, then you move into a higher energy. But more than moving into a stronger and a higher energy with appreciation, is that you move into a level of consciousness called synchronicity, in which you start to negotiate the presence of energy to serve as an attractor pattern. And that what I'm speaking about, solid energy as the lowest form of energy, and spiritual energy as the highest and the fastest form of energy, and that spiritual energy, the energy of love, the energy of cheerfulness, the energy of kindness, the energy of peace, when this energy is brought to the presence of the energy in which you have problems, lower energy, that these problems dissolve, they can't survive any more than darkness can survive in the face of light, then there is some kind of a gap that you have to negotiate between the world of problem energy and the world of higher energy. But what you have to look at here, when I say you can't give away what you don't have, is to ask yourself, if I can't give away what I don't have, it means that I am giving away what I do have. And because it's the only thing I can give away. I have to have it to give it away. So, and if energy is the vehicle upon which things are attracted and come into my life, then what is it that I am sending out there? Because it is in giving that we receive. What is it that I'm giving? What am I sending out there? What kind of energy do I send out there? And begin to look at that as the rationale and the explanation and the reasoning behind what is showing up in your life. That it really has nothing to do with what's going on outside of you in other people and in other events and in what other people are saying or doing or circumstances of your life. As much as we like to use that as an explanation and a rationale for it, that in fact, if you can change around your thinking to ask yourself, why do I keep attracting what it is that I'm attracting into my life, and what can I do to attract something different into my life? These things that we're calling attractor energies, that possibly, just possibly, I might be able to come to a place where I recognize that everything that's going on in my life, everything, I take responsibility for. And if I continue to attract the wrong people, or scarcity instead of abundance, or illness instead of health, or unhappiness rather than happiness, or fear rather than faith. And again, I always go back to that very famous prayer of St. Francis, where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is hatred, love. And if I can find a way to rid myself of those, just the thoughts, that I might possibly open myself up to a new idea, a mind that is open to everything, is one in which I say that I have been responsible for attracting all of these things into my life, and now I'm going to work at it for a given period of time of attracting something different into my life. I'm going to go with new attractor patterns of energy. I'm just going to go with it and see if I can make that shift begin to take place. And this thing that I have referred to as synchronicity is something that Jung said is something that is very real and is very powerful and is something that you can access. Which means that as you reach a faster energy yourself, you see, if everything is energy and nothing happens until something moves and everything is moving, then you yourself are just a great big bundle of energy. You are just vibrating, and if you are a bundle of energy, if you buy this idea that your hand and your feet and your eyes and your entire body is really nothing more than a series of very, very tiny subatomic particles all moving together very fast with spaces between them, and you see that and you can get that, then you recognize that there's got to be a frequency at which you are vibrating. It's got to be vibrating at some frequency. And if you can also accept the idea that if I could move to a faster and a higher, more spiritual energy, that I will literally change the vibration at which I am vibrating, then it begins with the thoughts. It begins with how I am processing and thinking thoughts, that I can absolutely get to a place where I can start to radiate out different kinds of energy. If I had a woman from Holland who came over to see me, whose husband had left her after 25 years. She had 4 children, and she just had been on the verge of suicide. And she was losing weight, and she was depressed, and she was taking all kinds of drugs for it, and she was getting sicker and sicker because she just couldn't get over it. And she came to a book signing that I was doing at a bookstore down in Florida. And she said, "You've got to say something to me. You've got to say something to me that will help me to get over this." And I told her this line. I said, "Give up your personal history. Merge yourself here, now, into this moment. And those 25 years are something, if you want to understand how to do it, think of your past as, oh, this hat. And this is your past. Now, you can't just set this thing down over here and walk away from it and give up your personal history, because you'll always have it there to look back at. What you do is you pick up your past and you embrace it. You understand it, you accept it, as I had to go through these things that I had to go through in order for me to get to this place today, and the evidence for that is that I did. You don't need any more evidence. You did. And then you toss it. You toss it. You embrace it, and you toss it. And you merge into the now by giving up your attachment. And some of you have heard me use the metaphor of the wake. Alan Watts talked about the wake is not what drives the boat. The wake is just a trail that is left behind. That's all it is. And so is the wake of your life. And the wake doesn't make the boat go, and neither does the wake of your life, the reason why your life is going in the direction that it is. The wake is a trail that is left behind, and it's an illusion to believe that it is the cause of your suffering or your struggles or your difficulty. Give it up. Let it go. Embrace it, understand it, get help doing that if you must, and then move into the now. Wisdom is avoiding all thoughts which weaken you. You know, every thought has an energy, just like everything else in the universe. And if you have a thought of shame, it will weaken your muscles. And what is your heart but a muscle? If you raise a child who believe in shame and feel ashamed of themselves, every time they think that shameful thought, they will be weakened. And if you have a thought of fear, and if you have a thought of stress, and you have a thought of anguish and anxiety, all of these thoughts and many more are the thoughts that will always weaken you. When you are having a thought that you know is disempowering you, shift it. Shift it to one that is empowering rather than disempowering. And the thoughts that empower are thoughts of neutrality and willingness and love, and ultimately thoughts of divinity. And when you see a troubled person who is out there struggling at the highest level of unity consciousness or God consciousness, or spiritual consciousness, you recognize yourself in all that you see. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And I am connected to that person. Changing your thoughts. I appeared on the Tonight Show many years ago, several times, quite a few times. And I remember coming home from the Tonight Show, and I was walking along the beach, and they had taped the show the night before, and I was out for a walk, and a woman who lived in the Northeast stopped me, and she said, "Didn't I see you last night? How could you be here?" I said, "Well, I flew the red eye, and I was walking along." She said, "You know, we're moving down here." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like?" And I said to her, "Well, what are they like where you live?" She said, I live in a very big city." And she said, "They're very pushy. And people are not very kind. And they don't have time for you." And she said, "It's really not very pleasant." She said, "That's one of the reasons I'm leaving there." I said, "Well, that's pretty much what you're going to find here." That's basically what the people are like here. On the way back on the same day, someone else who had seen me the night before on the Tonight Show, who had lived in the Midwest, stopped me and asked me almost the same question. She said, "You live here?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Well, my husband and I are moving here and we're looking for a school." She said, "What are the people like here? What's it like here?" I said, "What are they like in Chicago where you live?" She said, "It's the Midwest." She said, "People are very friendly, they're open, they open their homes to you, they're very loving, they're very kind." She said, "It's a wonderful place." She said, "I love that. I'm going to really miss that." I said, "That's pretty much what you're going to find here." It's what you expect. It's what you think about that expands. It's what Emerson taught us. The ancestor to every action is a thought. Change your thoughts, and you change your world. Change your expectations, and you change around what you begin to manifest and see showing up in your life.
I have been accused over the years in the critical press of providing false hope to people. People will call, and I'll be on a talk show on the radio someplace in the world, and someone will call in who's been diagnosed with a terminal illness of some kind, and I will talk to them about not buying into the diagnosis. About why would you just listen to a group of people who have a vested interest in convincing you of this impending doom in your life, and the law that has ever allowed any miracle to ever take place in the history of humanity is still on the books. It hasn't been repealed, so that energy, whatever it is, whoever has ever healed themselves of a diagnosis of terminal illness, used the same kind of energy that is in you. And so people say, well, that's providing false hope and so on. And I remember. Again, to speak about Michelangelo, I mean, these people that I selected for, or that selected me for Wisdom of the Ages, I feel after studying their lives in depth and looking at not only what they had to say, but what they were like, I mean, I feel like you're talking about my grandfather or something when you speak about Michelangelo. And again, in Florence, when we went to Florence, I said, I'm just going to go see the statue of David. And I thought, well, I'll just look at this statue. Everybody has to see David.
Yes.
And I walked in there, and you go through this long corridor, and you see all of these slaves on either side that are coming out of the concrete that were all sculpted by Michelangelo. And then you come into this room that's all lit, and then there's this statue, this magnificent statue, and it's 18 feet high. And it is the most astounding thing I've ever seen. And I'm not a big art critic or even going to art shows and sculpture and all that. I enjoy it, but it's not something that I have a passion about.
Yes.
Well, 4 hours later, Michael, I was still standing in front of that statue. My wife and my 3 daughters were out climbing El Duomo and buying shoes and doing all the things that you do when you're in Italy.
Right.
And they came back and they said, Dad, come on, we have to leave. And I felt like I couldn't leave that place. It was such a beautiful experience. I mean, you can see every vein in in this thing, and it's just a magnificent experience. So when they ask, there's this wonderful quote that they ask Michelangelo, how could you have created such a perfect specimen of sculpture from one piece of marble? His famous quote is that David was already in the marble. I just chipped away the excess.
Yes.
And that there's a David inside each and every one of us.
Yes.
And this idea of if you're, the greater danger is not that our hopes are too high and we fail to reach them, it's that they are too low and we do. And most people see themselves in terms, they don't see, I think you should see yourself as a saint. And I think a person ought to be envisioning themselves as capable of doing anything. I think it's possible to excel in every area of life. That is, you don't have to sort of restrict yourself to one area. I think you can enjoy going to a National Football League game in the afternoon and going to the ballet in the evening.
Yes. When
people say, well, you're a speaker, usually speakers, and you get paid a lot for speaking, so usually speakers are not good writers, or because one is introverted and supposedly and one is extroverted. And I have often thought, why can't you be a really fine writer and a great speaker as well?
Sure.
And why can't you be a great athlete and a poet as well? Why not? And most of these people like Goethe and Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Shakespeare and Pope and so many of these people, these were people who were masters at 1,000 different things. Isn't that interesting? How we, like in medicine now, I mean, now you have a specialist who specializes in the right finger.
Right, exactly. Yes.
We have hand specialists, we have foot specialists and nose specialists. And imagine going to school for years and studying only the hand.
Yes.
Whereas here was Da Vinci or Michelangelo, and they studied, they were anatomists. I mean, they studied anatomy. And were medical people, the way that Michelangelo learned about, how to do sculpture was by examining cadavers. They would literally steal the cadavers and go through, and he would examine them. And it's like when you discover the greatness that's in yourself, and not restricting yourself in any way, and not enough of us can think of ourselves as being able to excel in all areas and to have high hopes about virtually everything, because high hopes is not just a song that Frank Sinatra sang with a bunch of kids. High hopes is being able to visualize and see for yourself what it is that you'd like to be able to accomplish in your life.
Every single person on the planet has within them the potential to be a healer. In order to make conscious contact with your inherent healing powers, you must first make the decision to be healed yourself. Reconnect to the disease-free, loving perfection from which you came is a succinct statement of what self-healing process requires. The universal mind of intention knows precisely what you need in order to optimize your health. What you must do is notice your thoughts and your behaviors, which are creating resistance and interfering with healing, which is the flow of intentional energy. Recognizing your resistance is something that's entirely up to you. That source is never focused on what's wrong, what's missing, or even what's sickly. True healing takes you back to the source. Anything short of this connection is just a temporary fix. When you clean up the connecting link to your source, attractor patterns of energy are drawn to you. If you don't believe that this is possible, then you've created resistance to your intention to heal and to be healed. If you believe that it is possible, but not for you, then you have more resistance. If you believe that you're being punished by the absence of health, that's also resistance. These inner thoughts about your ability to be healed play a dominant role in your physical experience. Becoming a healer by healing oneself involves another one of those imaginary somersaults into the inconceivable, where you land upright and balanced in your thoughts, face to face with your source. You realize, perhaps for the first time, that you and your source are one when you let go of the ego mind, which has convinced you that you're separate from the power of intention. From thoughts of sickness to intentions of wellness. The decision to create is the decision to intend. To create healing, you can't have thoughts of illness and anticipate your body falling victim to disease. Become aware of the thoughts you have that support the idea of sickness as something to be expected. Begin noticing the frequency of those thoughts. The more they occupy your mental landscape, the more resistance you're creating to realizing your intention. You know what those thoughts of resistance sound like. I can't do anything about this arthritis. It's the flu season. I feel okay now, but by the weekend it'll be in my chest and I'll have a fever. We live in a carcinogenic world. Everything is either fattening or filled with chemicals. I feel so tired all of the time. On and on and on these thoughts of resistance go. They're like huge barricades blocking the realization of your intentions. Notice the thoughts that represent a decision on your part to buy into the illness mentality of the huge profit-making drug companies and a healthcare industry that thrives on your fears. But you're the divine, remember? You're a piece of the universal mind of intention, and you don't have to think in these ways. You can opt to think that you have the ability to raise your energy level, even if all of the advertising around you points to a different conclusion. You can go within and hold an intention that says, I want to feel good. I intend to feel good. I intend to return to my source, and I refuse to allow any other thoughts of disorder or disease in. This is the beginning. You'll feel empowered by this unique experience. Then in any given moment of not feeling well, choose thoughts of healing and feeling good. In that instant, feeling good takes over, if only for a few seconds. Illness is not a punishment. You don't have a need for healing because you were bad or ignorant or as retribution for past life offenses. You've taken on whatever you're experiencing for whatever lessons you need to learn on this journey, which is being orchestrated by the all-providing intelligence that we're calling intention. In an eternal universe, you must view yourself and all others in infinite terms. Infinite terms means that you have an infinite number of opportunities to show up in a material body to co-create anything. As you view the sickness of the mind and body that permeates your own life as well as the rest of humanity, try viewing it as part of the infinite nature of our world. If starvation, pestilence, or disease are a part of the perfection of the universe, then so is your intention to end these things a part of that same perfection. Now decide to stay with that intention, first in your own life, then in the lives of others. Your intention will match up with the intention of the universe, which knows nothing of egos and separation, and all thoughts of illness as punishment and karmic paybacks will cease to exist. You can't heal anyone until you allow yourself to be healed.
Connect to a loving, kind, receptive to healing energy, which is the field that intended you here. Be willing to accept the fact that you're a part of the healing energy of all of life. The same force that heals a cut on your hand and grows the new skin to repair it permanently is both in your hand and in the universe as well. You are it. It is you. There's no separation. Be conscious of staying in contact with this healing energy because it's impossible to separate from it except in your ego-diminished thoughts. By raising your energy to a vibrational match with the field of intention, you're strengthening your immune system and increasing the production of well-being enzymes in the brain. A change in personality from being spiteful, pessimistic, angry, sullen, and disagreeable to one of passion, optimism, kindness, joy, and understanding is often the key when witnessing miraculous acts of spontaneous recovery from what were called fatalistic prognostications. Don't ask to be healed, ask to be restored to that perfection from which you emanated. Let nothing interfere with the intention that you have to heal and be healed. Discard all negativity that you encounter. Refuse to let in any energy that will weaken your body or your resolve. Convey this to others as well. Remember, you're not asking your source to heal you because this assumes health is missing from your life. Come to the source as whole and complete. Banish all thoughts of illness and know that by connecting back to this source, filling yourself with it and offering it to others, you become healing itself. How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it. Reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling of an eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century A.D., said, "You carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it." Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as He does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration.
Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, you can do this. Yes, you can. If we react to this message with anything other than, you're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it, then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only secondhand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent, and so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.
To change the thought from notice me, to what Lao Tzu calls living in obscurity, becoming more obscure. We live in a celebrity-obsessed world, don't we? Look at me. Notice me. The Tao teaches something completely the opposite. Listen to the 66th verse of the Tao. Water again. The sea stays low. And because the sea stays low, all of the rivers and all of the streams empty into it. Because it stays humble. Because it stays in that place of just allowing everything to come to you. He was trying to teach us the important lesson of letting what we know is coming come to us. Verse 66 of the Tao. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Humility gives it its power. That's a very important principle to understand. And I live on the ocean, right next to it. It's my front yard. And always I watch it to learn something from this thing called the ocean, which is the most powerful source of life that we have on the planet. Without it, there's no life on this planet. And because it stays low, so what does this have to say to us? Do you have the capacity to get past that ego need to always be saying, notice me, look how important I am? I mean, there's been a proliferation of this lately with this celebrity silly stuff, isn't it? I mean, CNN is doing, full-hour shows on silly little things about what happened to this particular celebrity or what happened to that celebrity, and the celebrity's never even done anything. And there's all of this talk about it, and all of the new magazines. I mean, and you go through an airport and you look on the newsstand, and all the same photos, just with different magazines. I don't even know what the names of all of them are, but there's like this huge market now that we have for people to get into a state of notice me, notice me, notice me. And how much do we train our young people, particularly in our schools and so on, that the one who is the star is the one who gets the most attention. The one who is the most important and the most valuable is the one that has the most people liking them, and so on. This constant obsession with needing to be noticed, when in fact, what I have found for myself is the happiest moments of my life are when I can do it low and slow and not have anybody out there even know what I'm doing. To be able to, I mean, Louise never would have advertised the fact of some of the things I talk about with her generosity. She does it anonymously. It's almost always done in those ways. No, look at me, look and notice me, how important I am, and so on. So much to learn from that kind of wisdom, from that kind of inner connection to the Tao, the ability and the willingness to do it anonymously, to say that you can just get done almost anything that you want to get done if you don't become obsessed with taking credit for it. In the 36th verse of the Tao Te Ching, it says, "The gentle outlast the strong. The obscure outlast the obvious." Try to become a little more obscure, a little less interfering, a little less notice me, a little less, one of the specific kinds of things that you can do is just as you're about, when somebody else is talking, just as you're about to interject what you've been thinking about for the whole time, waiting for them to stop talking, just stop and to bite your tongue and say, "Tell me more." Or, "That's very interesting. I have never heard that point of view before." Even if they totally, completely disagree with everything that you stand for, to be willing to listen, to be able to stop. Practice it. I practiced it when I did these verses of the Tao. I practiced it every single day while I was working on that. Just staying obscure. And for me, that's not always so easy because of just being recognized wherever I go. And if I saw someone was about to recognize me, I would just put my head down. I would just walk a little bit past them like something. Right now, I just want to be anonymous. Right now, I want to be obscure. The Tao says, storms always end. Verse 23, fierce winds don't blow all morning. A downpour of rain doesn't last all day. Who does this? Heaven and earth. You're already connected to everything you want or need. It will come to you at the exact perfect time, as the rivers and the streams come to the ocean at the perfect time and place. You gotta trust. You gotta know it's going to come to you. You don't have to chase after it. You can become a little less obsessed with your ego and your self-importance and who you are and what you've done, and you can get so much more done. And you know what? It's the most peaceful and sweet, delicious way. It's like the song that Cecilia was singing about the rose. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
See, I believe that circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him. That's from James Allen in As a Man Thinketh. One of the ironies for me is in the neighborhood that I live in Florida, real close to where I live is a very poor area. And I drive through there, and this area in Florida has the highest unemployment rate in the state of Florida. And the yards are the messiest in the state of Florida. Now, that is a real incongruity to me. Why would a neighborhood where everybody's unemployed, or so many people are unemployed, be so sloppy? Why would there be trash all over the front lawns? Why would the garbage not be taken up? These are people who have nothing else to do. They got all day long to work on their lawn and to keep it clean and to paint their house and to do whatever it is that they... But they're not doing that. Most of the time when you drive through there, you see a whole lot of people sitting around in groups, either playing cards or gambling, or there's some drug dealing going on. What I believe is that a person's circumstances
reveal a lot about you. That we have choices as we go through our life, regardless of where we're born or what our status is or what our color is or whatever. We still have a lot of choices that we don't exercise, and what we do is we reverse it. We blame our circumstances on why my house isn't nice and why I don't have a lot of money, and we come up with all of these kinds of excuses. And what you have to do to understand the concepts that I'm talking about here is to get that when you get these principles and they become a part of your life, the circumstances of your life are going to start changing dramatically. It isn't the other way around. It isn't that my circumstances are the thing that created all of these problems that I have, and it's the man that I'm married to, or the woman that I'm married to, or the way my children behave, or it's the job I have, or it's my boss, or anything external to yourself. When you change around your attitudes and your beliefs about yourself and about your fellow man and about the universe and about your place in it, and you begin to adopt a loving stance towards all of those things, when you begin to think loving thoughts and positive thoughts and beautiful thoughts, that's what you ultimately have to give away. So instead of being angry at other people or your boss or whatever, what you have is only loving things to give back to them, or positive things, or ways of thinking that are in harmony. That's what you have to give away. And when you start giving that away, you start amazingly seeing the circumstances of your life change. See, many times I will be speaking to an audience, or I'll be on television. This happened to me on AM San Francisco just a few months ago. And they were asking me questions about my life and all of this. And they said, well, don't you think that it's really easy for you to say all of these things about being positive and enjoying your life and the perfection of the universe and all of these kinds of things? Because look at you. You're a millionaire. You're a popular author. You've had a lot of fame. You're on television all the time. You've got everything that a person could want in life. It's easy for you to say. And my response was, then I'm the person that they should be listening to. I am not saying these things because I have a lot of money and because I have fame and so on, that maybe I have a lot of money and a lot of fame because I live these things that I'm talking about. And I'm the person who came out of a set of circumstances that everybody else who came out of those circumstances in my family and in my immediate surroundings don't have the things that I have that they think are so important. This money and this fame and all of these accumulations and things. And coming out of an orphanage situation, coming out of poverty, coming out of broken family, coming out of an alcoholic father who abandoned his family, and all of these kinds of things, and having to be put into separate homes and so on, and then living in very, very poor circumstances virtually all of my life, perhaps I am where I am because of these principles, rather than that I can spout these principles because of where I am. That's really my response to people who think that this stuff about higher self and being a more spiritual person, I don't have the time for that. I don't have the luxury for that. My suggestion is that get your priorities in order. Get this stuff that we're talking about here in this program. Get this and understand that you are the product of the way that you think, and that the circumstances of your life are revealing you. They didn't make you. And that if there are things about your life that you don't like or would like to improve upon, whatever they are, whether it's making more money or improving your relationships or getting a better job or getting your book published or whatever it is that you have got going in your life, that if you stop focusing on that and begin to look at what kind of a human being are you and how do you fit into this whole body of humanity, and are you part of the solution or are you part of the problem, and are you in harmony, first of all, with yourself as a human being? And do you love the self that you are and treat it always with respect and love, the love that it deserves? And consequently then cooperate with the other people around you. Do you send them love because that's all you have to give away? Do you radiate love, or are you trying to get it from other people? And do you see the miracle that you are? I said that I would like to talk about the 3 levels of consciousness, A being individual consciousness or ego consciousness. And I said that there are 2 people inside each and every one of us. The first one is the ego. The second person inside each and every one of us is what I call the sacred or the higher self. And this sacred or higher self really doesn't care whether we win or lose or how much we get or who we're better than or how much we have. It's not interested in that.
This part of us that lives in every single one of us only wants one thing. It wants us to be at peace. At peace. And it wants to choose peace. As it says in the Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. I remind myself that every day when I drive my children to school in the morning and they're fighting over who called shotgun and who gets to sit in the front and who gets to push the buttons and who listens to the rap music and who's daddy's my turn this time, and they're going back and forth, and I just remind them, I can choose peace rather than this. And I'll say, look out or I'm going to push my button. And they say, okay, okay, okay. They don't want to hear that crappy music or whatever. All right? The ability to choose peace. One of the selections that was most profound in my life that I wrote an essay about for 60 Days to Enlightenment in Wisdom of the Ages was from Rabindranath Tagore, the great Indian poet, from a selection called the Gitanjali, which won the Nobel Prize for Poetry and Literature in 1927. He said, I went out alone on my way to my tryst, but who is this me in the dark? I step aside to avoid his presence, but I escape him not. He makes the dust rise from the earth with his swagger. He adds his loud voice to every word I utter. He is my own little self, my Lord. He knows no shame, but I am ashamed to come to thy door in his company. The ego just wants to be right. The higher self wants to be kind, wants to be at peace. And if you can just begin to shift that, just ask yourself, as what I'm about to say, I always tell people this in counseling groups and so on, that there are 4 words, that if you learn these 4 words, they'll eliminate all conflict in all of your relationships. These 4 words are, you're right about that. No matter what it is somebody says to you, you give them that. You're right about that. Someone says, you know, you're really a jerk. So, you know, you're right about that. Because that doesn't make somebody right. She'll say something to me, you know, you were supposed to be home at 7:15 and it's now 6:30. There was a time when I used to say, wait a minute, you're not my mother. I don't have to explain to you when I come home. I'm the one that's out working. And who do you think buys all these, you know, there was all that ego stuff that was a part of my life. You've all heard those before, right? Now I just simply say, you know, honey, she said, don't hold those 4 fingers up. I hate it when you do that. Now I notice she holds the 4 fingers up, but she's doing it one at a time. She's going like, you know. But it's the idea that just as you're about to respond to somebody, instead of saying, well, I need to be right and I need to prove myself, I'm just going to stop. And just, I am no longer. And every single person that operates at these higher levels that I'm describing here tonight, that I've known, they have no need to be in charge, to be right, to be dominant, to be they allow themselves to realize, as you know, the story of Buddha, when he had someone following him around for 3 days, and all they ever did was criticize him and find fault with him all the time. Everything he said, everything he did, they found, and always what would come out of him would be this peace and this love. And finally, after 3 days, the man who was criticizing him said, I don't understand. I've done nothing but insult you for 3 days and make a fool of you, and you always respond with kindness and love. He said, how can you do that? And the Buddha said these magical words. When someone offers you a gift and you don't accept that gift, to whom does the gift belong? So if someone offers you a gift of their anger, their hatred, their insults, but you don't accept it, who owns the gift? And why would you go around being upset about something that belongs to someone else? It's not yours in the first place. That's a higher level of awareness. That's being able to choose peace.
This arrived in my home, about a year before I started writing Wishes Fulfilled. And it's called the I Am Discourses. The I Am Discourses are, I think, one of the great spiritual texts on the planet today. You can pick it up, especially Volume 3. It's published by the Saint Germain Press. Saint Germain is, I believe, because I'm a student of Yogananda, and Sri Yukteswar, his teacher,
who was born on the same day I was in only 1855 instead of 1940, like me. And they speak about this saint that is capable, who always keeps a young body. His name is Babaji. How many have heard the name Babaji? Yeah, this is an audience. I don't have to ask that. Saint Germain is Babaji, in my opinion. This is someone who shows up in a young body. And when you read Ascended Masters Training, The Unveiled Mysteries, The Magic Presence, and the I Am Discourses, which I have read all of them and studied them before I actually channeled Wishes Fulfilled. But let me just share with you just something here at the very beginning of it. Life, in all its activities, everywhere manifest, is God in action. Remember what I said earlier, the life in your body is weightless, and it is God. It is what you originated from, it is what you will return to. It is where my mom is right now. And it is only through lack of the understanding of applied thought and feeling that mankind is constantly interrupting the pure flow of that perfect essence of life, which would, without interference, naturally express its perfection everywhere. Saint Germain has come to me. I feel as if I have spoken to him. And one of the things that I know from Saint Germain, from Babaji, is that it's only 1 in a million people who spend any amount of their time giving thanks to the I Am presence that is your very essence, your being. Not giving thanks for all of the bounty that you have in your life and for your health and for all of the nice things, but to be in a state of gratitude for the awareness that who you are is this divine essence, this divine being. And when I do the meditation, one of the things that I say is I am in a state of continuous gratitude for the I am presence that speaks through my mouth and through my body and through my writing and so on. It's staying in constant contact with the awareness that there is something divine that is what I am. And every time I use this word, I am. The natural tendency of life is love, peace, beauty, harmony, and opulence. This, by the way, is what Lao Tzu said as well. For life cares not who uses it, but is constantly surging to pour more of its perfection into manifestation, always with that lifting process which is ever inherent within itself. I am is the activity of that life. How strange it is that students with sincere interest do not seem to get the true meaning of those two words. When you say and feel, I am, you release the spring of eternal, everlasting life to flow on its way unmolested. In other words, you open wide the door of its natural flow. When you say, I am not, you shut the door in the face of this mighty energy. I often tell my audiences, God didn't say when Moses asked, what is your name and who shall I say sent me? He didn't say, my name is, I hope things work out for you. He said, my name is, I am that I am. That meaning, when he says, I am that, that was Nisargadatta's great autobiography, or biography, and a book that I have studied for 30 years now. And he was known as the I am guru in India. And these two words, I am, have so much power within them. I am is the full activity of God. Having placed before you so often the truth of God in action, I wish you to understand its first expression in individualization, in you. All right? The first expression of every individual everywhere in the universe, either spoken word, silent thought, or feeling, is I am, recognizing its own conquering divinity. The student, endeavoring to understand and apply these mighty yet simple laws, must stand guard more strictly over his thoughts and expression in word or otherwise. For every time you say, I am not, I cannot, I have not, you are, whether knowingly or unknowingly, throttling that great presence within you.
When you use the words I am, you are in union, you are in yoga with God. So when I do my yoga practice, and there's certain of these postures and asanas that I have a little more difficulty with others, especially balancing ones and so on. Before I start the asana, my inner meditation is, I am well balanced. I am perfect balance. I can do this. I am perfect balance. And as I do this, I begin to see that I am speaking to this body.
I wrote a book a few years back called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based upon the ancient teachings of Lao Tzu in a book called the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu reminds us that all being originates in non-being. Jesus put it this way in the New Testament, it's the spirit that gives life. That you didn't really come from your parents. All of us came from this place called spirit. And when you showed up here in this world, you showed up here from a tiny little drop of human protoplasm, a speck, if you will, and everything that was in that little speck that became you, everything that you needed was in that tiny little speck. One of the most important metaphors that I ever use is that the first 9 months of your life, from the moment of your conception until the moment of your birth, everything was being handled for you. There was nothing for you to do. You don't get consumed with the color your eyes are going to be or what your body is going to look like. It's all taken care of for you. You just surrender. I call it a future pull. And it's pulling you in the direction of whatever it is that you were supposed to be. And to me, it's not too great a stretch to say if everything you needed for the physical journey was already handled in there, then why not everything for the rest of the journey as well? All of your purpose, it's in there. All of what your personality, it's in there. Everything that you were to be, not just the physical you, but everything, if you just let go and allow. And so we're born. And we look at this beautiful little creature. As parents, I have 8 children. I've seen it happen many times. And you look at this beautiful little child and you look at it and you say, great work, God. Great work. Couldn't be any better. We'll take over from here. And then we're surrounded by all these people, our family, our culture, wherever we go. And we begin to be told that we can't really trust in who we are. We have to trust in something outside of ourselves. And we're on a journey towards ambition. Once you begin to say, we'll take over from here, you introduce something, you just take this perfection and you just edge out the Creator. You edge God out. E-G-O. Ego. This ego is the part of us that starts to tell us who you are is not this perfect divine creation, this piece of God that you came from. It doesn't say that. It says who you are is what you have. It begins with things like our toys, and then our bank accounts, and then the possessions that we have. Before you know it, we begin to identify ourselves on the basis of our possessions. We begin to take on a set of beliefs about the more that I have, the more valuable I am as a person. And so we spend our lives taking these young children and immersing them in a culture that emphasizes more. It becomes almost a mantra of the ego. You have to have more. And the more you have, the more you are aware of how much other people are trying to take it away from you. The more you get consumed with how do I protect it and how do I make more of what I have. The dilemma here is that if you are what you have and things go away, then who you are also goes away in the process. Second component of this ego is the idea that not only is who I am what I have, but it's what I do. And what I do becomes this thing called achievement. And in this whole world of believing that I am what I do, we become consumed with this whole idea of my success, my value, my worth as a human being is based upon how much I accomplish. So I have to make more money, I have to get a promotion, I have to compete with everybody else who's trying to get what I have. We are taught this over and over and over again. All of our young people are taught this when they go out into athletics. The most important thing you can do is be number one, and you say, we're number one, we're better than everybody else. And we constantly find ourselves in this competitive notion again of believing that our world is one in which we have to compete. That's what the ego says. Now, the third aspect of this is the idea that I am what other people think of me. That is, I am my reputation. Particularly, this is relevant for young people who are taught that you have to dress the way other people think, and if other people don't like you, then there's something wrong with you. If you're consumed with that, then you're going to be something different every time you turn around. Now, this is particularly relevant with women, especially in relationship to the family. Women are often taught in our culture and our society that the only way that you can fulfill yourself is by how you relate to your family, to yourself as a daughter, to yourself as a mother, to yourself as a grandmother. And while these are very important and creative aspects of every woman's life, if that's the choice that they make, it's not necessarily the only thing. And many women feel that deep within them that they have a calling to accomplish something great, to make a contribution, and oftentimes will put it aside. So what I encourage women to think is, don't ignore that calling inside of you. Don't ignore the part of you that says you came here to create something powerful, and you have just as much of an influence in doing that, just as much of a right to do that as anyone else does. We move into then the later parts of the ego, which talks about something called separation. And the ego has a very strong belief system that who I am is separate from everybody else. And then another component of the ego teaches us that I'm also separate from everything that's missing in my life, from all the things that I'd like to have. And then finally, the ego teaches us the most egregious error of all. It teaches us that we are separate from God. And one of the simple constructs that you learn in the afternoon of your life when you shift into the meaning phase of your life is to realize that you came from a source. We can call it God, we can call it Tao, it doesn't matter what we call it. And that this source is everywhere. There's no place that it is not. It must be, because it creates everything. Everything comes from this source. That it must be in me. If there's no place that it's not, it must be in me. And if it must be in me, it must also be in whatever it is that I feel to be missing from my life. If you know that, then in some way, everything that's missing from your life that you would like to have, you're already connected to it in spirit. And all you have to do is figure out a way to align yourself with that and have a knowing that you're already connected to it. You just have to bring it on its way.
Part of me really knows, more than just believes, but knows that when you're born and when you show up here, your work shows up here with you. It's placed in your heart. And too often we ignore it in the name of fulfilling a destiny that has been laid out for us by other people and so on. So these people that I will be referring to, what I call ancient wisdom, this ancient wisdom came from people who felt something very profound in their hearts that they absolutely knew that they had to express. And it's almost as if you have to find within yourself what it is that you know you are here for and follow that instinct independent of what anybody else out there might think about it, without being objectionable and nasty and recalcitrant and so on, but still having within you this knowing that I have certain music that I have to play. I have certain things that I have to do. And I feel it deeply, and I feel connected to that. And not allowing myself to do it means that I might spend that time. I might get to that place at the end of my life and say, what if it's been wrong? What if I didn't listen to that inner voice? An ancient teacher, his name is Patanjali. And Patanjali is known in the ancient world 1 to 3 centuries before the birth of Christ. There's no actual date of actual record of his birth and death. And he was the one who wrote the original Yoga Sutras and wrote a wonderful book that I immersed myself in a few years back called How to Know God. And Patanjali, one of the things that he said to these people, now remember, we're talking about something that's going back maybe 3,500 years or more. And here was this great teacher in the ancient world. And this is one of the things that he said. When you are inspired, the word inspired comes from in spirit. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you're truly inspired in your life, that is,
when you're doing what you know you're here for, everything seems to work. The right people show up. You don't worry about being hungry. You don't worry about being tired. You're not concerned with whether or not anybody's going to like it or not. When you're truly inspired, that is, whether it's cooking or being with your children or writing or composing music or filling out tax forms, whatever it might be, when you feel inspired, everything works. And the reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired.
When you are inspired, all your thoughts break their bonds. As I explained earlier, being inspired is equivalent to being back in spirit. Before we showed up in form, our mind and the mind of God were synonymous, which means that we were free from the bonds of the ego mind. This is simply how the world of spirit works. It's impossible to have limiting boundaries or self-imposed shackles placed on us. When we're in harmony with the mind of God, we simply don't have thoughts that tell us we can't accomplish something. After all, our thoughts are of a higher energy. Returning to spirit results in a grand sense of being in tune with our uniquely divine purpose. Just imagine being able to go on and on for hours at a time without experiencing fatigue or hunger or thirst or mental exhaustion, all thanks to one factor, the willingness to be back in spirit. When you are inspired, your mind transcends limitations. When we're inspired, we remember that God is always in us and we're always in God. So we're incapable of thinking limited thoughts. We're transcendent. We've gone beyond the world of boundaries and entered a space of creative knowing. In other words, we surrender. We put ourselves under the guidance and control of our purposeful force. When you are inspired, your consciousness expands in every direction. When we're in spirit, every direction is possible for us at every moment because our consciousness happens within our mind. Now, this inner world of ours, reunited with its originating essence, doesn't think in only one direction. Rather, it allows all possibilities. Our consciousness is in the absolute state of allowing. All resistance in the form of thoughts is non-existence. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. These dormant forces will come to all of us. They're actually alive and well and have been working on our behalf for as long as we've been here. Yet they appear to be dead to some because they've left behind their divine purpose, which we decided on long before we ever took on the insane ego. When you're inspired, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The act of being inspired by some great purpose allows us to feel the essence of a spiritual being having a human experience, rather than the other way around. Patanjali suggests that we could never even dream of our greatness because we've been imprisoned by our beliefs about who we are. We bought into the idea that we were limited in our ability to create an all-encompassing life, and we were certain that we had no choice in our own destiny. We defended our need to acquire more and to live a scarcity consciousness in which we competed with everyone else for a meager slice of the whole pie. All of these imprisoning thoughts result when we're not guided by spirit. Moving into a state of inspiration removes all of those restraining ideas. As Patanjali notes, we'll discover someone we couldn't imagine because we were incarcerated in ego's jail, imprisoned by what we now recognize from our inspired viewpoint as an illusion. We need to awaken from the bad dream that has stupefied us in the fog of ego and live from the blissful perspective offered by being in spirit.
Surrender to this radical notion that is required for you to awaken to the awareness that all habits begins with thoughts. It's radical, I know. I know it's not something you're accustomed to hearing, but you have a habit because you have intended it to be there. Now what you do is you surrender to a new consciousness, a thought that whispers, I can do this thing in this moment. I will receive all the help that I need as long as I stay with this intention and go within for the assistance I need. Now you announce to yourself that you're no longer that old habitual person. For just a second, just for a second, you awaken just for a moment. Then you go to the next moment with this surrender, not thinking about tomorrow or anything in the future. In the now, in this moment, you have the answer. That's how you go about making those seemingly difficult changes, one step at a time, with an inner grace that allows you to surrender and stop fighting. All those habits, those things that have plagued you for your entire lifetime that you think you can't change, that are just a part of you, are nothing more than thoughts turned to intention, turned into laziness, addiction, short-temperedness, phobias, fatigue, whatever. Change the thought, change the intention, and you no longer have those as your consciousness. What you can do is create an inventory of all the things in your life which you continue to pursue, but truly you don't want in your life. This is actively putting into your life the intention of no longer pursuing the things that you don't want, which may have been your habit for a lifetime. So you remind yourself of the wisdom of the notion that you never get enough of what you don't want. Then you take this hour, this very hour, this day, now, and you create an inventory of what you would like next to the one you have outlined. Rather than deception, you might substitute truth in your relationships. Rather than booze, you might substitute 8 glasses of water a day. Rather than anger, you might substitute love and harmony. By assessing that which continues to reign into your life because you're letting it in and encouraging the leaks in your life, you automatically have the handle on a new way of eliminating the erosion in your life. You fill your life with that which you don't want, largely because you've simply never considered the available options, and you fear the glorious harmony and the intimacy that comes from refusing to chase after the poisons that are killing you. By becoming aware of them, by using your invisible miracle-making mind to create that which you truly want and know you deserve, you find yourself living in harmony. You begin to experience in the physical world all that which is what you thought you were entitled to create. Inventory your life and get it on purpose, and substitute the things that you are pursuing that you don't want with the opposite. Substitute what you do want and begin then to pursue that. And you see it works. It's like real magic. Thought, intention, and no longer pursuing that which doesn't work for you. It's like getting your life off of scatteredness, off of being splintered, and being on purpose.
This is a very important and significant quality that separates out great teachers, great philosophers, great thinkers, poets, prophets, the people that, again, that we respect and admire, is that they are not doing what they're doing because of what is going to come to them. They're doing what they're doing because this inner voice says, I can't not do it. I'll die if I don't. I've got to get my music out. I can't die with my music in me. And so people who are detached from outcome, the irony of being detached from outcome, I think is summed up in Thoreau's definition of success. I think the best definition of success I've ever heard came right from his mouth. He said, if you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. That is, if you find what you know you have to do, what your intuition, what your inner voice tells you is why you're here, and you pursue that and let go of outcome, be unconcerned with how it's going to work out, you're going to find more and more things arriving and showing up in your life. I mean, it's been absolutely true for me. When I detach from outcome, I do my best writing. When I detach from being concerned about how an audience is going to react to me, I feel like I give my best talks. And when I stop being concerned, I mean, I had to learn this a long time ago. I didn't know this back even 20 years ago. I can remember calling my agent and friends and saying, where am I on the bestseller list? Back when Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and Sky's the Limit, those books were topping the bestseller list. And then one day, I don't know if it was my wife, probably was, said to me, you're not on the bestseller list. Your book is on the bestseller list. You are not the bestseller list. Big lesson, huge lesson. Detach from whether people are going to buy it, whether people are going to like it, and know in your heart, and then let go. and just watch. And then it starts to show up. I remember when I so desperately wanted to do any national television back in the 70s. Desperately. You know, any show that I could get on, Phil Donahue or the Today Show, Good Morning America, the Tonight Show, and all of that. And none of that was coming. But I was out there, and I had purchased the first couple of printings of my book, and I went out there and I distributed them to various bookstores. I mean, I did crazy things. I filled my car with books, and because every time somebody told me I couldn't do it as a scurvy elephant, I would just say, oh yeah, kind of thing, and thank them for telling me what I couldn't do, and then go out and do it. And then one day, I kind of let go of that, and I wasn't concerned any longer about trying to get on this show. I had a publicist who was doing that. Then I got a phone call from one of the talent coordinators on The Tonight Show, and he called up and he said, would you like to come on and do a pre-interview? Fly out to California. I said, great. I flew out to California, did a pre-interview, and then I flew back to where I was staying in Michigan. Then I got a phone call in Michigan saying, you can do the show next Monday night. It was in August. It was 1976. And Shecky Greene was the host. And I said, great, I'll go on with Shecky Greene. I love Shecky Greene. I flew back out there. I did the show. It was fantastic. I got 20 minutes, the author spot, you know, but we had 2 segments, and it was great. But it was August something, 1976, and it was the day of the Republican National Convention. And Robert Dole was giving the keynote address. And the first time in the history of The Tonight Show, they preempted The Tonight Show. After I had flown back to tell everybody about watch me on The Tonight Show, they had preempted it, and because his speech went too long. I have never been a real big fan of Bob Dole. No, that's just kidding, of course. So I didn't know what was going to happen and so on. Apparently the next day at the meeting, this friend of mine who was working on the show, his name was Howard Papish, he went in and told them about this guest that had been on Monday night, and Johnny Carson had talked to them and said, look, if he was a good guest, then why don't we invite him to come back out and appear with me before that show airs. They called me back, flew me back out to Michigan, from Michigan. This time there was a limo waiting for me. When I got to the Tonight Show, I did the show on Wednesday night. It was great. We had about 7 or 8 minutes, but we got cut short. And Johnny said to me, would you like to stay over and do the show again tomorrow night? Because we didn't really have enough time to give you. I said, no, I'm busy. I've got my screen door. I said, no. I said, of course. So I did the show the next night. Then on Monday, they showed the preempted show that had been preempted from the week before. So from having absolutely no national exposure of any kind, I had 3 Tonight Show appearances in 4 days. And it's about that business of advancing confidently in the direction of your own dreams. Going out there, doing what your heart tells you to do. I can't tell you how many books I get from people have written this book, and please give me an endorsement, and please tell me how to go about doing it. They want these long letters, and I always respond, just do it. Just do it. You can't write my speech. You can't deliver my speech. You can't do it the way I did it. What does your heart tell you? Go out there and never stop. Have that passion and detach from the outcome. Such a powerful lesson. Let go of what's going to come to you, and what is going to come to you will keep showing up in larger and larger and larger amounts.
I believe in being, not striving, arriving. You have to be your goal, as it were. You have to not be looking for the truth, you have to be truth. You can't be looking for healing or a healing method out there at all. You have to be truth. And when you are it, it is never something that eludes you. I just had a great experience. On the 1st of January of this year, I quit drinking caffeine. Okay? I had a bad addiction to not Coca-Cola, but Diet Coke, Tab. I could drink a crowd pleaser. Easy. In a speech, I could. Or Diet Pepsi or one of those things, those big 64 ounces. I was drinking 8 to 10 cans of that stuff a day. Inadvertently. I just didn't know. I'd have it for breakfast, I'd have it in the afternoon, and I'd always had one when I was driving, and whenever I'd give a speech, I had one. And my wife had said to me, and everybody who knew me was saying to me, that's the thing that's got you. That's the one that you can't get rid of. You know, you talk about being, and you know it's not good for you. You know how you feel when you drink too much of that stuff. Then I heard a tape by a man named Ram Dass. Ram Dass had a tape about this Buddhist monk who was the son of a Buddhist saint. And this Buddhist saint was a woman. And there's only been like 4 female Buddhist saints ever in the Theravadan Buddhism. And the woman was very upset with her son because he was a narc in Thailand. All right? And in Thailand, they have the highest incidence of heroin addiction in the world. The heroin addicts are on the streets everywhere. The woman would say to her son, instead of imprisoning these people, instead of punishing them, instead of putting them in jail, instead of all of these things that you do, why don't you try to help them? Why don't you send them love? Why don't you, as a saint would say, okay? And he said, but I don't know what to do. And she encouraged him to study Theravadan Buddhism, and he did. And this is the most austere of all of the fields of Buddhism. It is the area of Buddhism in which you have to practice like 130 austerities a day, all right? You don't sleep on a mattress, you sleep on the floor, you don't look at anybody of the opposite sex, you don't dance, you watch every single thing that you eat, you say prayers all the time. I mean, a lot of these austerities, physical austerities, well, he got into it, okay? And he thought that these people were too wild for him, right? So he invented like 30 more austerities of his own. And he was practicing 160 of them a day. And Ram Dass said when he met him, he was like meeting a tree trunk, all right? He was that firm. And what he would do is he would take this truck and he would go through the streets of Bangkok. And he would say to the heroin addicts, if you want to get rid of your addiction in 1 week, 1 week's time, jump on the truck. And we'll take you to the monastery and you'll be rid of it in 1 week, guaranteed. He would get these large numbers of people that would jump on. Every week he would take another batch of these addicts. I mean, and I'm talking heroin, the hardest thing in the world for us to overcome with will. And he would take them there, and the first thing he would say to them was, this is your only chance. This is the only chance that you're going to have in life to be rid of your addiction. And then he would say to them, I am the treatment. I am bigger than the addiction. And I will show you that. And he would take heroin. And he wouldn't have any effect on him at all. He just wouldn't even react to it. His mind, he had trained himself to be bigger than the addiction, and showed them that. And then he would put them through this violent purging, vomiting kind of thing to cleanse out their system and so on. But the thing that he talked about that is the most profound to me is the idea of becoming the treatment, being, the psychology of being. I have taken Maslow's notion of the psychology of being to levels now in my life to challenge myself in areas that I never thought were even possible before. And one of them was with this minor addiction, caffeine, tab. I mean, he would laugh. Tab? You're having trouble with tab? I admit it's not major, okay? But nevertheless, for me, it owned me. And I let it own me for over 20 years, all right? This was the stuff that was, it was my last addiction, if you will. Smoking had been something I hadn't had anything to do with for 25 years. And drinking, no part of it. It doesn't interest me. And putting poisons into my body and all of these kind of things. And keeping myself in shape, no problem. It was this thing that I kept holding on to. So what I did on the 1st of January this year is I re-listened to that tape, and I became the treatment. It's an amazing thing. See, when you take something into your body that you know isn't good for you or that you don't like, or let's say it's a cigarette if that's what you're trying to quit, or if it's alcohol or caffeine or too much sugar or whatever it is, and you consume that, what happens is as that goes through you, it becomes you. You become it. You become one with the poison. And every time you do that, you are the poison. You're not consuming poison. You are not using a method of putting poison into your system. It's not that. That's one step removed from being. Being means you are it. It is you. You are one. You are at unity with the poison. All you have to understand with any addiction that you may have, any kind of an addiction, is that once you become the treatment and you stop being the poison, It's not even a challenge anymore. I mean, it's so easy. I'm not that anymore. That's not what I am anymore. Not that I've mastered it or that I've got a method. That's great that I want to tell you about this method. It's that I am no longer it. It is no longer me. And I am someplace else now. When you get that, when you understand that notion of being, and beginning to apply that in your life, I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's like in religion, people are looking for the 10 Commandments, okay? But in the Bible, it says, live of the truth, doesn't it? The whole idea of the kingdom of heaven, I mean, that's one of the great secrets of the universe that is so simple. I mean, the kingdom of heaven isn't this place that you're going to get to. It is within. It is what you carry around with you. And when you are the 10 Commandments, you don't need them. You don't need any of that. You simply are being that. And when that is you and you are it, you are what they call, what Christ called, of the truth. All right? Not looking for it, not trying to get it from someone else, not hoping that someone else can reveal it to you. It is what you are.
And that word infinite is a very important word to think about because it's the opposite of finite. Finite means something begins and ends. If it didn't end any place or didn't begin any place, we wouldn't be able to call it finite. We would say it is always continuing. The minute that it stops, the minute we have a form to it, the minute we place anything on it that is associated with this physical corporeal world that we all live in, it moves from the infinite to the finite. So to try to define that which is infinite with a brain or a mind that is finite is an impossibility. Lao Tzu knew this and understood this. It's why meditation is such an important part of the process of coming to our highest self, coming to know who we are. It's the place where there are no beginnings. Herman Melville once said that God's one and only voice is silence. Is silence. It's the one place where there's nothing finite there. And Blaise Pascal, the famous French philosopher and scientist, once said that all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. But most of us just aren't comfortable with this because we have come to believe and trust in the evidence for who we are is on the basis of that which we can touch and see and feel and smell, what our five senses tell us. But our five senses lie to us. William Blake pointed that out beautifully in one of his poems back in 1777. He said, to see the world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and infinity in an hour, we are all led to believe a lie. When we see with, not through the eye, which was born in a night, to perish in a night, while the soul slept in beams of light. We are all infinite beings in a temporary human experience. I've said it over and over again. Whenever people ask me what's my very favorite quote, my very favorite observation, it came from Pierre Teilhard, the French priest who was excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his outrageous ideas. He said that we're not here as human beings having a spiritual experience. It's the other way around. We are all infinite spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And coming to a place where we live our lives from that infinite place and beginning to know our soul. So getting to know the soul, the spirit, and not identifying ourselves on the basis of our physical senses. It's the essence of my newest book, which is a PBS special called Wishes Fulfilled. It's the whole message behind all of it, is to really come up with a specific way to come in contact with this infinite part of ourselves. Now remember, if it's infinite, it doesn't stop any place. It doesn't start any place. That's by definition infinite. So if something doesn't start and doesn't stop, what is it doing? It has to be expanding, doesn't it? The minute it stops expanding, it's finite. We're no longer talking about the soul. We're talking about what Blake said, we've become, we see with, not through our eyes. So here's what I jotted down. The ideal of the soul, the thing that it asks for, is neither knowledge, nor light, nor happiness. The ideal of the soul is space, immensity. The one thing it needs more than anything else is to be free to expand and to reach out and to embrace the infinite. Yeah, the ideal of the soul is infinity, because that's what the soul is. All of us are here in bodies that we believe is who we are. We're totally convinced of it. I was in a 21-year-old body, and I can't find any part of it anywhere on the planet. But while I was in it, I was absolutely convinced that this is who I am. And then I moved into another body, and another body, and another body. And the same is true for each and every one of us here, that there is some part of us that is infinite, that is the soul, that is the spirit,